Hey there, everyone. I'm recording this for students of mine in MIS 3502, and as you can see from this rather clever illustration on the screen here, I'm dealing with some entropy today. Entropy is that force that makes life get more complicated. Entropy is a principle of physics that says that in nature, things tend to go from an ordered state to an unordered state, and the only way you can deal with entropy is to fight it. So in both sections of MIS 3502, due to a little bit of entropy in the last week or so, my two sections of that course have gotten into slightly different spots. And so I want to try to get everybody into the same spot. So I'm going to fight the power of entropy. To do that, I'm going to do a video review of assignment 7, the part that we were to do together in class. Depending on what section you are in, we got through more or less of that together. But for now, let's see what we can do. So here we have assignment 7. We're going to use a RESTful API, and I think I described this satisfactorily in class. The goal of the API is to simulate a game of Hangman. Hopefully everybody's familiar with this game. I probably played it in grade school at one point or another, where you're trying to guess a word. It's a little bit like Wheel of Fortune, right? So the user interface to the game can be found here. So I'm going to open that up, and here I have, and again, I would encourage you to download the Microsoft Word document and follow along. Here's my game. I'm going to sign in as Joe, ABC 1 2 3. I sign in, and I guess a letter, R. And you can see that that was a success. I have R here, and I have 6 guesses remaining. If I were to guess another letter, say X, I would go to 5 guesses remaining, and I have my list of past guesses down here. And there I am. I'm playing the game, right? A, and I keep going, and I don't know what the word is. Maybe S. Maybe RSTL? No, N. Seems unlikely. And F? I guess it could be fears? No. E? I think I know this one. Gears. Yay, I won. Okay, so that's me playing the game, right? Now the Word document here that I have behind all of this, which I'll put up on the other screen, invites you to take a little tour of this code, right? So nowhere in the JavaScript, in the client-side JavaScript of this code, is there a list of words, right? So it's not like you can go snoop around in the client-side code and know what all the possible words are. Okay, let's take a look. So if it were to say view page source, and look, there's a section here that says your custom JavaScript. I'm going to go look at that link down in here, right there. Now I'm looking at the JavaScript. And this code is different from what we've seen so far. There's a couple things going on here. The most notable is that previously, whenever we wanted to reach out to an API or a web service, same thing, right? We would use the getJSON method, right? So we're still doing that down here in the login controller. That's still here for your reference. Now, and when we would have the URL, the serialized data, and then the callback function. So when the call comes back, we would take some action. But this code is different. It's no longer using get JSON for most of the API calls. We have supporting functions for starting the game, ending the game, and making a guess. All of those functions use a new jQuery method called AJAX, $.AJAX. And $.AJAX is a very general purpose sort of utility that allows us to specify a group of statements that will be used to make an AJAX call. The AJAX statement has a URL that we're going to, a type, some data to send, and a callback function for success, as well as a callback function for error. So those are two important ways in which this code is new and different. One, it's using this new utility. Two, this code does not assume that every call I make to the API results in a success, right? And by success, I mean a response of status code 200. That is how an API will recognize success. All right. Let's see here. What event starts a game? So if I go down to my login controller, when a user logs in successfully, this block of code runs, and you can see the very last thing inside of this block of code is a call to a supporting function called start the game. So every time a user signs in, there's a new game to be played. So that's what initiates a new game, a successful login. What initiates a guess? Well, if I go down to my navigation section, my document ready section, I should say, when I click on the guess button, I have a call to the guess controller. So that's going to initiate my guess. Let's go see guess controller. Get history, send the guess, start the game, navigation control, login control, guess controller. So the guess controller updates some things visually on the page, and then calls send the guess, which is the AJAX, which is the supporting function with all the AJAX stuff in it. Okay. So again, the controller does it updates some things on the page, and then it calls send the guess, which is just a convenient way to show all of the things that to send to the API endpoint some information and get a response back. Okay. What initiates the end of a game? Well, I look here. There is no button here to end the game, but there is a logout button. So when I have these navigation items up here, all of this is managed by navigation control. So I'm going to not look at the HTML. I'm going to look at the JavaScript, and I'm going to find the navigation controller code, and it says if the ID to show is div login, then what happens when that login logout link is clicked? And by that I mean this one right here. Then end the game. So end the game is called there, and end the game is a supporting function that initiates a call to the API endpoint of type delete. Right? So we have a couple different types of API call in here: a delete, a post, and a get. And they all do slightly different things. Okay, so let's go back to my Word document and see what else we have. So we are, we can now go to the endpoint. Let's go look at that endpoint. So if I go, again, looking at my code again, and I have endpoint 1, endpoint 2. Let's go look at this endpoint. So that's a copy and a paste. And there we go, right? There are instructions. So remember back in the presentation about RESTful APIs, we said APIs should be self-describing. This is an example of that. When I go to the endpoint of the API, I have instructions that describe how to use the endpoint. It's self-describing. All right. This is a little bit hard to read, and we have a problem, right? The problem is that we have posts, deletes, as well as gets. So if I want to issue a get request, right, I could manipulate the URL here. I could do game question mark and have key value pairs, right? That would be a get request. Everything, any data I send is going through the query string that is tacked on to the end of the URL to the right of the question mark, right? Been talking about that since the beginning of the semester, right? That's a get request. But deletes and posts and puts do not allow you to send data in that way. So how are we supposed to test all this? Well, if you were to read ahead a little bit in the Word document here, you'll find that there is a utility called API Request IO. Right? It's a website. It's a web-based utility, so you don't have to install anything. We're going to use that, and I'm going to actually put this up on the other screen, and I'm just going to jump right in and demonstrate its use. So I go to API request.io, and I get this rather large header of text here. Kind of wish that wasn't quite so obnoxious, but there it is. I have to scroll down a little bit. And in this box here, I can put in an API endpoint. Let's put it in. So I'm going to put in my Hangman endpoint there and click the green send one button. And you can see that I'm going to reduce my font a little bit. I got workspace history that told me that was a success. Look at that, status code 200. And then I have my instructions here. You can see that they're a little bit easier to read than they were when I looked at them over here. But more important than just improved visibility, I also have the ability to issue different kinds of requests. So this is a request using the get method. If I hit that little link there, I can see that there's a bunch of other HTTP methods that I might possibly want to use. I have get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head, options, link, unlink, purge, lock, unlock, prop, find, and view. Well, Professor Schaefer, do you expect me to know all of those? No. I expect you to know how to use get, post, put, and delete. Those are the 4 that you're going to be accountable for knowing by the end of the semester, right? And you're going to need to use them in all these assignments. Get, post, put, and delete. Okay, so looking at those instructions that we had there a second ago, let's create a game. It says post to game with a user token to create a game. A game ID is returned. Okay, so I'm going to post to game. That means I have to add on game onto the end of the URL, right? And I'm going to send a user token. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everybody can see what I just did there. But I can't put the user token here because this is not a get request. This is a post request. That means that any data I'm going to send along for the ride has to be part of the body of the request. See, it says request body down here. And I could send that data in a number of different ways depending on the API and its expectations. I could send it as JSON, I could send it as XML, or I could send it as raw URL encoded data. I wish that this option said raw URL encoded data, but it doesn't. So I'm going to say user token equals 1, send. And look, I got a response back of 200. That's my second one. And I got a game ID of 628. Now, everybody hang on. You got to remember, your number will be different, right? Because your game is different. You could have issued a different user number. You could have issued a different number for user token. In order for the next two tests to work, you're going to have to remember what your user token was and what your game ID was. Everybody hear that? You got to remember. Game ID 628, user token 1. All right, so that was a creation of a game. What if I want to play the game or make a guess? Well, that would be a get against game with a user token, game ID, and guess to get a JSON response. The response will indicate game status, the letters guessed, a word to display, and a message. Let's try it, right? So we're going to issue a get. The data, because this is a get request, the data has to be here in the query string, because that's the way the get method works. User token equals 1 and game ID equals 628 and guess equals, I get to choose a letter here, X. Okay, I don't need this data down here anymore. It doesn't hurt to send it, but it just won't be used. All right, so there we go. I hit send, and now I got a response back. This is my successful response. And look, there are the things that the API said it would give me. The game status, the past guesses, the word to display, and a message. There are 5 guesses remaining. Let's try a different one. Let's try the letter R. R. Send. Notice I have my little list of past activity here. Okay, now my game status is still in progress. Guesses, display word, and I have 5 guesses remaining, right? The only way this goes down is if you guess wrong, right? So if I were to guess X again, which would be silly, but I could do it. Now I have 4 guesses remaining because I guessed X twice. And keep going. What if I wanted to delete the game? Delete on game, sending a game ID and user token to end or delete the game. All right, how do I do that? Well, I would go to here. First, I'd choose the method of delete. Oh, not, there we go, delete. And over here. And so I don't put the question mark in down here. It's user token 1, game ID 628. That will delete the game. Gone. I get a confirmation here that says success. It worked. Okay, so we can now, with API requests of different sorts, I can now play this game. And we use the API request IO code to do it. What's going on in the database? Well, if I were to go over here and look at my database, this is where all my game activity is being stored. You can see that I have a table here, and if I refresh it, go all the way down to the end, you can see that there's the game I played originally, Gears, right? And then I never explicitly logged out, so it wasn't deleted. Game 628 was deleted because I explicitly deleted it, and you can see some other students have been playing the game today. So this is important now. You say this. The Hangman API is really just a proxy for a number of database operations. There's some Node.js code that sits in between the user's interaction with the HTML client and the backend database. And in fact, you could say that the API, that the Hangman API, implements a series of business rules that specify in great detail what database operations are and are not allowed against the database resource. For example, I do not let just any user say delete from games, right? That would destroy everything. I have this finite restricted list of operations that I allow a user to do by leveraging the API. And of course, by now, okay, I showed you the database. And by now, you should understand that get roughly correlates to a select statement. Post roughly correlates to a SQL insert statement. A put roughly correlates to a update statement. And a delete, HTTP delete, roughly correlates to a SQL delete statement. So let's see if we can make some of this happen. So we're going to now notice that we have some jQuery magic here. Our new utility is called the Ajax method, and it has a structure that looks like this. $.Ajax, a pair of parentheses, and a pair of curly braces. Inside the curly braces goes a wide variety of command options that specify how the Ajax method should behave. There are a lot of options, and each option is separated by a comma because, hey, guess what? This is a JSON array of options. There's more options available than what I'm presenting here, but these are the ones that I would test you on, theoretically. A URL, the type, the data, and a attribute called success, and a attribute called error. These two are callback functions. So putting them all together, if I wanted to send an Ajax request of type post to this URL with a user token, I might see something like this. Now, the details of what goes inside the curly brackets here in the success callback function and the error callback function, of course, are going to be different than console.log. Might be something different than what you might, that depends on what you want to do with that data. But this is a good example to kind of work with. Let that, you might try typing that a couple times and seeing if you can make it work. So we're going to do that now. In assignment 7, hangman.zip, we're going to write 4 examples of the Ajax method. The first example should make a hangman game and get a game number back. The second will make a guess and get an answer back. And then we have the third and fourth examples. So let's see. I'm going to do this first one now and leave B, C, and D for you to do on your own. You'll want to upload your work to your EC2 servers www root and see where the work can be found. So let's save this. Let's do demo 1 together. Ready? Here we go. So you'll notice here that I'm going to work locally. I brought my assignment 7 folder into my local development space. And here we go. We have assignment 7 hangman and demo 1. Notice that all of demo 1 links to JS app01. And I have in here, I have a form. It's called form 1. It has, let's see, it has an input of type text with an ID of user token, an input of type button with an ID of button click me. That's what I have here on my form. If I wanted to take a sneak peek at that, I could open it in the browser. Again, easy to do because I'm working locally, right? Here's my form. This is what I'm looking at here, form 1. Input of type text for the user token. And a button, input of type button for the click me operation. Hopefully you can see the connection between those two things. Okay, let's take a look at our app.js code, app 1. And there are instructions in here. So to make a game, we will need to get the data off of the form and serialize it. Okay, so I will say let, what should I call this variable? I'll call it the serialized data, because that's what we always call it. If I wanted to call it something else, I could. And a $, and inside the $, a pair of quotes, and then something that's going to represent the form, hashtag, and I have already forgotten, just that quickly, I've forgotten what this form is called. Let's inspect. Oh, let's see here. It's div. Oh, look, I called it form 1. Great. Form 1. Serialize. Oh. I always think it's a good idea at this point to say console.log the serialized data. So now you can see what I sent. This is good for testing. Okay. Now what am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to write one of these fancy AJAX calls. So I'm going to say $.AJAX, pair of parentheses, semicolon. What goes in here? A pair of curly brackets. What goes in here? A pair of key value pairs that represent the AJAX call. Well, what are they? Well, they are back in the Word document of the assignment. And if you go back to the assignment, you can see that we have URL, type, data, success, and error. Those are the ones I'm going to be using. Let's see if I can do this. I'll say URL, colon, notice that I already have this constant set up. So I can say URL, colon, endpoint. Right? Or if you wanted me to, I could have put in a string there that said http misdemo://misdemo.temple.edu/hangman game, if that makes you feel better, right? But I already had that in a variable. It's right up there. So I'm going to use endpoint. I'm going to use it. Okay. What kind of operation is this? Well, I'm going to make a game. So it is a post. Notice that's a string. What data am I going to send? Oh, tricky now, right? Because I need to know the data that I'm going to send. What variable here holds the data that I intend to send? The serialized data. So data, colon, the serialized data, what will happen when the call comes back? Well, that's going to be reported by the success handler. There's a callback function, so there'll be a function with a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly braces. Then I'm going to put in a comma, and I'm going to deal with error, which will have a function with a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly braces. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill these things in. If something goes wrong, we're going to write something went wrong into the message div. So that means I have to go back over here to my code, and I need to know what that div is. Let's take a look. Oh, this div down here has an ID of message, right? I could have seen it here, or I could have seen it back in the by looking at the HTML. So I would like to go find the tag with an ID of message and put into its inner HTML something went wrong. Okay, let's see. If the AJAX call is a success, then put the result of the call, in this case a number, into the message div. Okay, so that would be, again, go find message.html and put into it the data that came back. Oh no, where is that going to be? Well, it's going to be here, right? The data gets passed to the callback function through as an argument. Professor Schaefer, I don't like the name data. I wanted to call it something else. All right. If that makes you feel better, fine. Just understand that this is sometimes an array. Sometimes it's a Boolean value. Sometimes it's a number. Sometimes it's a string. So I prefer a more generic item here that says game ID, or that says a more generic variable name called data. Helps me remember that it might take on different formats depending on what my API does. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to test this out. So I could go back to demo 1, and I could open that in the browser, and I go on down here to user token. I put in a number, 8, click, I get 630. Now you don't have access to the backend database. That's kind of the point of this, but just to show you that it really did happen, I'll refresh this. Oh no, I deleted all the games. All right, let's do it again. Okay, there's none in there now. Let's go back to my HTML. All right. Let's go look at my database. Game ID 631 belongs to user token 8. The secret word is river. The display word will be a series of 5 blanks. There are no prior guesses. I've made 0 guesses as of this point in time, and my game status is in progress. All right, so that is a pretty good treatment of the assignment. I even went ahead into the on your own part. So I leave you to try out B, C, and D on your own. Please give that a try. We'll discuss what student work there is to be had when we gather up as a class. Please do remember to upload your work to your EC2 server's www root, and we'll talk next time. Let me add on just one last thing here. When for this is, of course, we did demo 1. You have some more work to do. You can, in your code, oh, not that code. In your code, you can go to, if you need to, in this case, this works because data is a number, right? But what if data was an array? How do I convert that array to text? Well, in that case, you could say JSON.stringify data if data is a object, right? So you're going to want to use one of these or the other, right? So for demo 1, it would be this one, right? For demo 2 and demo 4, it would be this one. Hope that makes sense. Give it a try. Let's see how you do. Talk to you later.